Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa Leiden, and welcome to live election watch coverage of a discussion with the candidates running for mayor of Colorado Springs. Tonight's forum is brought to you by News 5, the El Pomar Foundation, and the Broadmoor. Tonight, you will hear from all 6 candidates you will see on next month's ballot. They include El Paso County Commissioner Amy Lathan, Colorado Springs Councilman Joel Miller, businessman Tony Carpenter, former State Attorney General John Suthers, former Mayor Mary Lou Makepeace, and businessman Lawrence Martinez. Let's go live now to the Broadmoor. News 5's Rob Quirk, the moderator for tonight's discussion. Good evening, Rob.
Lisa, good evening, and thank you to everyone watching on News 5 and online at KOAA.com. Also, a big welcome to all of our folks here at the Broadmoor. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Broadmoor for hosting us here this evening. Also, the El Pomar Foundation for once again teaming up with News 5 in our continuing Election Watch 2015 coverage. I'm Rob Quirk, and we are pleased to have all 6 candidates who want to be the mayor of Colorado Springs the next 4 years on our dais here this evening. Now, just to give you a little background of the viewers at home, I've already spoken to the crowd here in the audience this evening. We drew numbers about a half an hour ago to determine who would go first, second, third, etc. on the opening statements, and we'll go in reverse order for the closing statements. And again, we are going to try and get as many questions in as we can within the next 90 minutes. And just a warning to our folks who are watching on News 5, we are going to carry our broadcast live until the top of the hour at 7 o'clock, and then we will join NBC primetime programming at that point. But again, our discussion will continue for the next hour at KOAA.com, so be sure to get those computers warmed up, dial up KOAA.com, also on your smartphone device, to be able to continue to listen to the conversation here with the candidates tonight. So and also, by the way, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank all the viewers who were critical in putting this discussion together. You've been sending in your emails online at KOAA.com for the past several weeks. These are the issues that you're talking about in your homes. These are the issues that are going to impact how you vote in the next coming weeks. And again, a reminder, the election is April 7th. Ballots will be going out very shortly. And again, they have to be returned by 7 p.m. on April 7th. If there is not a majority winner that night, there will be a runoff on May 19th. If there is a majority winner April 7th, that new mayor will take office on April 21st. Without further ado, let's get started with our opening statements. It will be 1 minute. And Joel Miller, you have the stage. Mr. Miller, you have 1 minute.
I'm Joel Miller, and I'm for limited government. If government only used our tax money to fund core services like it should, we'd have plenty of money for police, fire, roads, parks, and stormwater. But government wants to use our money for other things, like more than the $300 million of local taxes and fees for the City for Champions projects, which include $200 million for a downtown stadium and another $130 million for infrastructure for a museum. In order for citizens to see who will use our money on these corporate welfare projects, I've written a 1-sentence statement to clear it up. I provided signature blocks for each mayoral candidate. Here's how the simple statement reads. As mayor, I will insist on prior voter approval before any city sales tax or property tax increment is used to fund City for Champions. I've already signed the statement, and on my Facebook page tonight, I'll let citizens know who else signed it. But this isn't just about City for Champions, it's about this question. If a mayor is willing to fund these projects, what is he or she willing to fund with our money next?
We're going to have to stop you there. Thank you very much, Joel Miller. Tony Carpenter, you're next. Mr. Carpenter, you have 1 minute, sir.
Thank you, El Pomar, the Broadmoor, KOA, and all you folks for joining us this evening. My name is Tony Carpenter, and I want to be your next mayor. Too much leading, not enough representing. Too many special interest groups, not enough representation from our citizens. Ignoring your vote. That's why I want to be mayor. When it comes right down to it, I don't want to spend a nickel of your money unless you say it's okay. Not just the City for Champions, across the board. We've had a lot of COPs, it just goes on and on. They don't listen to us. I want to represent you 100% of the time and would lead you when necessary. My name's Tony Carpenter, and I'm third on the ballot.
Mr. Carpenter, thank you. Mary Lou Makepeace, you are number 3. You have 1 minute, ma'am.
Thank you, and thank you to El Pomar and Channel 5 and the Broadmoor and all of you, because I know it's kind of nasty out there as I was slip sliding along Lake Avenue. I didn't think there would be so many people here, so I really commend you. My name is Mary Lou Makepeace, and like my colleagues up here, I want to be your next mayor. I was your mayor once before. I served on the City Planning Commission. I served 12 years as a city council member, and I served 6 years as a mayor. I'm running because I'm very concerned about my city that I love so much, that I've lived in for 41 years, raised my family here, worked here, can't think of another place I would rather live. I worry that we are asleep, we're dormant, exciting things are happening across Colorado, and we are basically going nowhere. We're too good for that, and I think we have a bright future if we can get our act together and pull our community together. I want to help do that.
Thank you very much. Lawrence Martinez, you have 1 minute, sir.
I want to thank everyone that put this together. I also like to thank for you guys coming out today, and I hope you got to miss all the potholes on the way out here. I want to make sure that we do have limited government. I want to make sure all the money that you put into the projects go to those projects. I also believe we need to educate our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders to be able to come out with a job. I want to bring more jobs, but I want to bring them at a higher wage. This will be the only way we're going to really raise sales taxes, by bringing in money, bringing in jobs. I hope that our economy begins to grow because we live in one of the greatest cities here in Colorado.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martinez. Amy Lathan, you have 1 minute, ma'am.
Thank you so much, everyone. It has been a tremendous honor to serve you as your county commissioner for over 7 years now, and I am running right now for the city because I do believe in what's possible in this city. I've been in the trenches at the local level of government right here with all of you for all of these years, working on things like transportation, fire impact, obviously, all of the recovery, fire code impacts as well, business development review, the things that impact businesses from the city level, the things that we need to do on a regional basis. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I have a plan to take this city forward in a very competitive environment, using a new approach to regulation and a new approach to regional delivery of services that I know will move the needle for businesses and the people who invest and take the risk to put up capital and hire people in this community. I'm very excited to be with you tonight and engage in this discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Lathan. And finally, John Southers. John, you have 1 minute.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, my motivation for running for mayor of Colorado Springs is simply this. I love our city. I've lived here all my life. I literally grew up with Colorado Springs. I've watched it grow from 40,000 to 460,000 people, the 41st largest city in America. As we look across America, large cities either grow economically or they stagnate. What direction are we going to go? I think we're at a tipping point. Our city has major challenges. For 15 years, Colorado Springs has lagged behind the rest of the state of Colorado in employment rates and new job creation. And over that same period, we've let our public infrastructure, our roads, our drainage systems deteriorate significantly. Over the last several years, the divisive political environment at City Hall has simply not been conducive to economic and community development. That has to stop. That has to change. I'm running for mayor because I believe I have the experience, the passion, and the collaborative leadership style to move this city forward.
We're going to have to stop you there. Thank you very much, Mr. Southers. Okay, our first question has to do with reestablishing trust between the mayor's office and city council. It's one of the most asked questions we received within the last several weeks at KOAA.com, and I want to actually use a comment that we received from current Mayor Steve Bach about the current environment at City Hall, and then I will have a question related to that specifically. The mayor told us, "I hope my successor has better luck dealing with City Council and a vague city charter that has been open to interpretation." My question to our panel here tonight is, how do you plan on addressing a problem that is a question being asked over and over again by residents here regarding the relationship between the mayor and City Council? And we're going to start with Joel Miller. You have 1 minute, Mr. Miller.
Voters in 2010 voted for a change to our charter, the council-mayor form of government. And when they voted for that, they expected a system of checks and balances. And right now, we don't have that. We don't have two separate branches of government that are serving the citizens as their primary focus. The first thing that I will do is I will make city staff available to city council to get information, because to pass good laws and to pass good budgets, council must have access to information, including the city attorney's office, that simply has been stonewalled for the last 4 years. We don't need better luck. What we need is someone who acknowledges that there are two branches of government, and I will be that. I have lived that and seen the problems when we don't. I also will make sure that there's a full-time attorney available to the city council that will work for nobody else. Council will be in charge of their own staff. Nobody from the mayor's office will be firing council employees. So we need to have access to information. You're all paying for us to serve you, and that's what the mayor and the council should do together.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Carpenter, the question again to you, sir. Reestablishing a relationship between the mayor's office and council in the current government setup, what would you do as mayor to try and improve communication and rebuild trust with the voters? You have 1 minute, sir.
Well, it comes down to representation of the voters. We need to listen to the citizens of Colorado Springs. The infighting is absolutely ridiculous. You've told us what you want us to do. I do my job, they do their job, we work together, and we go forward. I would like to see an amendment to the charter stating that if I feel that my one vote outlasts your hundreds of thousands of votes, I'll resign. I'd like to see that, no recall, just get out. We need to take and have a representation from every one of these elected officials that you put in office. Enough of this leadership. We're Americans, we can lead ourselves. We need to take and be heard. No more special interest groups, no more money flowing out there where they can't make a logical decision. I've got $0 in my campaign, so that just tells you all we got to do is do our jobs. And that's what this is, it's a job.
Mr. Carpenter, thank you. Lawrence Martinez, you have 1 minute. Again, reestablishing trust, bridging the gap between council and the mayor.
Trust, that's what you have with somebody who's driving 75 miles an hour and you're in the same car. We need to go forward and make sure that we have trust from everybody that's here. We also need to make sure that we collaborate with each other so we can move forward with the best projects, making sure they're getting done. I would make sure to meet with City Council at least twice a week. Then I would make sure to meet with the business leaders as well as community leaders to let them know what we're doing. If we begin to trust each other, then we can move forward with projects that we need to make Colorado Springs great. So I will listen to my constituents. I will listen to what they have to say and what I need to bring forward.
Thank you very much. Amy Lathan, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I have talked about this from the beginning of the time that I started to run for this. I am going to move the mayor's office from the city administration building to City Hall to be housed with City Council. I believe in the charter. The charter is a great foundation. What we need to be doing is working together for the singular mission that we have, and that is to make Colorado Springs even greater than it is, to allow business to thrive, and we need to do that together. I do not believe that the strong mayor form of government implies or dictates that this is some sort of a holy war between individuals, between a mayor's office and city council. This is common respect. This is the art of influence, indeed. This is working together for that mutual mission for all of you and to put our best foot forward out there in the rest of the world, both at the state level and the national level, to compete in this city. And we need to be unified to do that. And these relationships are going to be repaired, and we'll brawl through the issues that we need to, but we'll do it in a functional, respectful way.
Thank you, Ms. Lathan. Mary Lou Makepeace, you have 1 minute. Talk about bridging this gap between mayor and council, reestablishing trust with the voters.
Well, first I'd like to thank Steve Bott for being the first mayor under this new form of government, because there certainly were a lot of uncertainties that were involved, and council and the mayor borne the brunt of that. I've already started building a relationship with City Council. I've met with the returning council members. We've talked about the acrimony, what was their perspective. And generally I got the answer is, well, we behaved badly too. It wasn't just the mayor. And we'd like a fresh start, and we will work with you. And I would say to Steve, you know, it isn't a matter of luck. It's a matter of hard work. You work on relationships, and you work on trust, and you work on by respecting each other. I also believe in preparing people for the job that they've undertaken. I think it was very unfair to council members that they didn't receive the kind of training that I received when I came on council. I would make sure that they have access to all city staff. I would make sure I would invite outside experts to come and have us, lead us through a retreat. And I'd like to say more, but they put the stop sign up.
Thank you, Ms. Makepeace. And finally, Mr. Southers, you have 1 minute. Again, bridging this gap, reestablishing trust with voters.
I'm absolutely convinced that 80% of the problems we've had over the last couple of years are personality-driven, and only about 20% are systemic to our new form of government. You're going to see, if I'm the mayor, a totally different leadership and management style. I'm going to talk to the council. We're not going to have nasty email exchanges with copies to the press. We're not going to have dueling press conferences. We're going to talk about our areas of agreement, our areas of disagreement, see if we can capitalize on our areas of agreement and move forward. And yes, the council will have full access to the executive branch of government. They can contact any department they want to without going through the mayor's office. Folks, this is not rocket science, as they say. Yes, it's hard work, but I've been dealing with people that disagree with me all my life. That's basically been my career. I can continue to do it and move city council and mayor, the relationship forward.
Mr. Southers, thank you. The next question, second only to the rancor that voters seem to think exists between the mayor and council, is about infrastructure and stormwater repair. We're going to begin with Amy Lathan. Ms. Lathan, you have 1 minute. How would you change, as mayor, with your influence, if at all, the current stormwater plan passed recently by council to be more comprehensive over a longer time frame to include streets, public safety facilities, and parks?
Sure. I think we've heard from a lot of folks who were involved in the task force and the recent ballot initiative for dedicated stormwater funding that there were parts of that that they did not agree with, and clearly that was the case. It was modeled very closely off of RTA, the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority, but there were differences, and obviously there were issues there that folks didn't like. We need to bring that right back to the people. This is where openness and transparency and bringing the citizens in and having the citizens be a part of these solutions really matters. And so I'm going to continue this conversation. We're going to talk about stormwater from a dedicated perspective. We are going to talk about all of the other infrastructure issues, including IT and public safety and roads and bridges. But we need to look at those things from a regional shared resource perspective that we haven't seen in this city in many, many years, and that is going to matter to the delivery of those services. And so that is going to be a huge part of what I do to bring those shared resources together to bear as an entire region.
Let me just follow up real quick. Give me 30 seconds, Amy. Bringing more public input in, though, would that prolong the process in terms of actually making a decision or a plan, or where would you finally end the input and finally making a decision? How much time are you going to give this?
Sure. Certainly anything that has anything to do with new revenue that comes into the city obviously is a public discussion, and that's going to take time with the public to see what all of the citizens want to do. As it relates to existing resources, this can be done very quickly. This can be done by the end of the year with intergovernmental agreements to be able to do more with existing resources that we have right now. So it's a relatively short time frame, Rob.
Thank you very much. John Southers, a question to you, sir. How would you change at all this stormwater plan as we see it right now to expand perhaps to streets, public infrastructure, public safety facilities? You have 1 minute, sir.
I think the $19 million that the council has dedicated to stormwater is a good start. It's actually $2 million more than what we had under the former stormwater enterprise. But folks, the city has huge infrastructure problems over and above just stormwater. If I'm the mayor, in conjunction with the council, we're going to have a broad public discussion very quickly, and it's going to be along these lines. Here's our anticipated revenues. Here's our critical public infrastructure priorities that we need to do in the next 5 to 10 years. To the extent there's a gap, public, what's your choice here? Do you want to go on just applying as much of the growth as we can? Do you want to do bonded indebtedness, accelerate $200 million worth of projects but pay $300 million over 20 years? Do you want to do a 0.5% sales tax that terminates in 10 years that's dedicated only to these high priorities. We're going to have a very robust public discussion, everybody involved, and we're going to do it pretty quickly, Rob.
Would you support a tax hike?
If in fact this public discussion comes to the conclusion that we cannot deal with our infrastructure problems with existing revenues, I will take the case to the voters as to what we need to do. But the voters are going to decide whether we raise taxes or not.
Thank you. Joel Miller, you have 1 minute, sir.
The first thing we have to do is execute the budget we do have. We have a problem doing that in the city. In the 2013 consolidated financial report for the city, although there was an amount dedicated to roads, $1 million of that was unspent. So it's not because the roads were in perfect condition. I'm sure most of you would agree with that. So we're not executing the budget we have. PPRTA funding. Every year we roll over $5 to $6 million of road maintenance dollars, and there's no reason for that. Our roads have a lot of work that need to be done. Beyond that, for stormwater, we have $5.5 million dedicated to the budget in 2015. Colorado Springs Utilities does about $3 million of work that's associated with utilities infrastructure. $8 million goes to our capital improvement program, and we'll soon pay off bond debt that we're making $8 million a year of payments on, and that should be prioritized for stormwater. There's a lot of work to do, but if we prioritize it for the most critical needs, the ones that threaten the health and safety of our citizens, we can start knocking off that list. I love the city auditorium, but $300,000 on bathrooms are part of the capital improvement project, and they wouldn't be on the top of the list that I would spend money on.
Mr. Miller, thank you. Ms. Makepeace, the question again, how would you change, if at all, this current stormwater funding plan to invest more money, to widen its scope and time frame, if at all?
This is such a monumental challenge to our community. To hope to address it in 1 minute is almost futile.
I understand.
I know.
Yes.
I think the comments about having citizen engagement are absolutely critical. I think that we do not share information very well from the city to the citizens. And I don't think citizens believe or trust or know just how constrained the resources of the city are. The downturn in the economy, the ratchet down effect of Tabor, all of those things impact the amount of money that the city has to spend. I think it's time for us as a community to sit down and take a realistic look at what our needs are, and then a realistic look at what could we possibly accomplish at this point in time, and then have the conversation. Do we want to be a community that would be happy with a low level of service because we could then have a lower level of taxes? We already are the lowest in the state. Or do we want to be a community where we have quality services, recognizing that we have to pay a little for that? That's a fundamental decision for this community to make.
Thank you very much. Tony Carpenter, the question to you, sir, again, expanding, if at all, on this current stormwater plan that we have in place, how would you adjust that? You have 1 minute.
It's like Joel mentioned, you got $5.5 million. I worked for the City Street Division for 17 years. We took care of the stormwater. If you have the, we have the capabilities of using what you would call busy work. There's lots of times that we don't have work for employees and we give them busy work. Well, let's get some busy work going on some stormwater. Well, let's use the funds that we have and go forward with them. The biggest thing that I would do is pass the recreational marijuana. The taxes from that alone, I'm hoping to get 30% of the streets done for 3 years, and we're there. This amount of money, if you look at the state, it's a tremendous amount of money, and we're losing it. The voters voted for it. Let's go forward and get it done. The utilities, they've got downtime. The answers are real easy. All you need is a businessman and not a politician.
And let me just follow up real quick, just if you could, some examples that you've seen as far as this busy work or underutilized staff. Give us an example or two that you've seen and how that could change. 30 seconds.
Well, me working for the city, we have times, like when it starts to snow, it's too early to go out and put the plows out, so you drive around a pickup truck. You don't have quite as much stuff. It rains in the summertime when you're supposed to be paving. There's always some unit of our city that is down. We need to make sure when that opportunity rises, they've got something to do. It's just getting the best bang for our dollar.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Finally, Lawrence Martinez, again, the question is, how would you change, if at all, the current stormwater plan passed by council to be more comprehensive over a longer time frame to include streets, public safety, parks, etc.? You have 1 minute.
You know, we already know where you stand. You voted no against the last plan that was presented to you. We do really need to fix our stormwater situation. But what we need to do is go to other cities that have had the same problem to see how they addressed it, how they funded it. That way we know what works and what doesn't work. If we don't start to address the problems now, we will be running into problems later. It's time to start fixing the stormwater problems with the money that we have. We need to increase sales tax to cover that. But to cover the sales tax, we need to bring in better jobs, higher paying jobs. When we do that, we have people who can spend more money on different situations, so our sales tax begins. You know, we have a lot of people that live close by these areas. Once the flooding begins, these people are going to lose their houses, lose their employment. We won't get money paid back for these houses. Mortgages will be lost. We need to believe in what you need for the stormwater, and we need to set forward and move forward with all the programs that are there before us. We need to use the money wisely. We need to save what we can save to use on stormwater.
But do you, and let me just follow up real quick, 30 seconds. Do you believe that spending taxpayer money to further investigate what the best solution might be is a smart use of taxpayer dollars? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because of the fact, like I say, we'll be looking outside to see who has done this work before. If we start figuring out how to do it, we spend more money. We spend too much time trying to do decisions on, is this plan workable or not? So we need to move forward with what we have now.
Thank you very much. Our next question is about the public utility situation, Colorado Springs Utility, CSU. It's a two-part question, panelists. What I'd like to do is first kind of get a short answer from you, yes or no if you want to, 30 seconds if you choose to, and then a follow-up question with a little more information from you about the question itself. And the first question is, and Mr. Martinez, we're coming right back to you, sir. You have you can choose here again 30 seconds or just a straight yes and no answer. Do you support the appointment of an independent board of directors for CSU rather than council?
Yes, I do. The reason is the more people we have working on this matter, the more information we're able to share with each other, and we make an educated decision.
And the follow-up question to that is, and you have 1 minute to explain your position here, we have seen the cost to retrofit the Drake Power Plant downtown in particular continue to escalate, now approaching $200 million. Should Martin Drake be decommissioned, is the expense that CSU is putting forth right now smart decision-making by the part of the city utilizing taxpayer dollars, or would you believe in, again, decommissioning that plant and perhaps putting that kind of money into renewable energy sources?
Yes, we need to decommission Drake. It's becoming a problem for everybody. There's activists who say we pollute too much. And by decommissioning Drake now, we'll save money by moving forward with different kind of energy ideas. As long as we do that, I think we can move forward with saving money. But if we keep Drake running right now, we're just going to have to keep retrofitting, because with anything that's old, we need to make it newer, meaning more money.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a quick time out here. As I mentioned at the top of our show, the first 30 minutes of our discussion here this evening is live on News 5. We are now going to break away for those folks who are watching on News 5, KOAA-5, and join NBC programming in progress. Again, a reminder that we are going to continue our discussion for the next 1 hour at KOAA.com. We are streaming it live, so we're going to take a quick pause right now as we transition to network programming and continue our discussion in just a few seconds. Okay, welcome back, and again, thank you all for joining us here this evening. Again, want to welcome back in those folks who may have switched over from News 5, KOAA-5 to KOAA.com to continue our discussion here with the 6 mayoral candidates in Colorado Springs. We are continuing our two-part question on Colorado Springs utilities. The question is to Tony Carpenter. Again, it's a two-part question, Mr. Carpenter. First of all, yes or no, or take 30 seconds if you like, sir. Do you support the appointment of an independent board of directors for CSU rather than council serving that position right now?
No, I don't. I would like to add one little thing to where, yes, we need to have a few really specialists, have a hybrid, because I personally don't want somebody that's running that board that isn't representing you. That's my concern. Hybrid, still have our council members representing you.
And the subsequent question to that is, should Martin Drake be decommissioned? Is the money that we're spending right now to bring it up to EPA standards, is that smart money, or would you like to see that money go towards more renewable energy resources?
Well, I think it's a little late. We do want to decommission Drake, but we got to keep our rates low. We need to go towards renewable energy. We got to find funds to do that, and we will. But we do need to get rid of Drake as soon as possible because of pollution.
Thank you, sir. Mary Lou Makepeace, the question to you, again, 2 parts. Do you support the appointment of an independent board, or would you like to see it remain as a function of city council?
I don't want to see an independent entity. And much as Tony said, the utilities belongs to the citizens of Colorado Springs, and the decisions need to be accountable to the citizens of Colorado Springs. And the decision should be made with the viewpoint of what is best for Colorado Springs and their citizens. And I don't trust an independent board. I know there's been a proposal floated that they would be totally independent. They'd set their salaries, they'd find their replacements. It's a crazy idea, and if that's what they mean, they being the proponents of these ideas, then I not only say no, but I'm absolutely opposed to it.
And then the follow-up again, what would you like to see with the Drake power plant? Decommissioned? Let's continue moving forward with the expense we're seeing, or use that money otherwise?
Well, you know, it's no simple matter to decommission a power plant, especially one that serves such a large measure, provides electricity in such a large measure. So we are looking toward decommissioning it at some point, but it takes time, and it could take 10 years or even more. And right now, we don't even have the answer to what would we replace it with. Sure, I'd like to see more green energy, but what are the other options for us besides coal? Until we can work through all of that, we're not going to it's not like turning off a knob and then we don't have Drake anymore. It's a very complicated process.
I understand. And just a quick follow-up. Seeing these costs escalate, is that something you're good with? Or do you think at some point the council, utilities board, has to say enough is enough? Let's work with what we have. Let's stop giving us another free pass on writing a check.
Well, I don't know that they really look at it that way.
Well,
of course,
that,
I'm not, I don't like
But there is a lot of
escalating.
feedback from taxpayers who are
Right.
saying, wait a minute, when is this going to continue? When is it going to stop escalating every 6 months?
Well, I'd like to clarify one thing. They're not spending taxpayer dollars. They are spending ratepayer dollars, but not taxpayer dollars.
Well, I think that's semantics, but
No,
please.
it's not. It's two different pots of money.
Well.
I've lost the question now that we had our little to-do here.
Again, the escalating cost, at what point do you say enough is enough?
Nobody likes escalating costs, whether it's at home or at utilities. I guess I would have to get deeper involved in the conversation. You know, I know there's such things as sunk costs, and you say, well, that's it. I don't think we're at that point yet.
Okay, thank you very much. Joel Miller, the question to you, to support, obviously you served on council, you are part of that decision-making process. Would you like to see that change to an independent board?
No, I do not. And the simple reason is that we're a municipally owned utility, and just like an investor-owned utility whose shareholders elect who their board is, the shareholders of Colorado Springs Utilities are the citizens, and they should have direct accountability for the people that run their utility. Not for the least of it, which is the fact that the board sets the rates. They determine who pays what part of development costs. If you have a special interest appointed board in there, you're going to have ratepayers and your utility bills going up a lot higher with no accountability.
And let me just follow up again, the second part of that question, your thoughts on the future of Drake. Decommission, continue what we're doing, renewable energy resources, where do you stand?
Rob, we have experts running Colorado Springs Utilities. So for us to sit here and second guess their stories, I've seen all of the updates from the modifications to the Drake power plant. And while we keep having media reports of escalating costs, many of the costs aren't for the actual equipment itself. It's for upgrades that would be required for any kind of scrubbing that would be necessary for silicon dioxide. And if you want to look at the cost of coal and you think that's expensive, cost of coal per megawatt hour is $22, natural gas is $40, solar is $100. So if we want to bring businesses like we keep talking about bringing here, we can't tell them, please come and accept our 4- or 5-fold power cost when that's a major portion of what you have to pay to do business.
You talked about the numbers being put out there by the media. Just in our defense, we see the cost. We tell the taxpayer, they see the number. They need to do their homework as well as far as the context of that expense. But is that something that City Council, as the CSU board, needs to do a better job of explaining, or are we just allowing CSU to do what they want without giving taxpayers a good explanation of what is being done and why? You have 30 seconds.
I do believe that communications needs to be better, because when you look at the work that's being done on the Drake Power Plant, again, it serves 30% of our power need. Our peak power demand is coming from the Drake Power Plant. And when you look at the costs, many of them are costs that, for example, the floor of the power plant can't handle the weight of the equipment. So some modifications to the structure itself has to be done. And those aren't figured in as costs that came in for the actual equipment that's being put into place. And we should do a better job. It should be explained, but there's a lot of details and it's difficult to follow, and you can't do it in a 30-second clip on the news.
I understand that, but I'm talking about moving forward now here. Thank you. Mr. Southers, the question to you, sir, first of all, do you like the Colorado Springs City Council serving as the Utilities Board? Would you like to see that change?
Utilities governance is a matter for the city charter. The citizens of Colorado Springs are going to answer this question. And I do think we ought to have a robust discussion over the next couple of years. Everybody involved, utilities employees, utilities customers, everybody involved. The majority of municipal utilities in this country have some kind of board with expertise between the council and the utility. And we need to look at those models and see if that's something we want to adopt. Maybe we want a hybrid. Some elected council members to have electoral accountability, but also have the opportunity to get more expertise into the process.
And the follow-up on the Drake Power Plant, where do you stand in terms of its existence and moving forward?
Folks, we don't have much choice in this. We're complying with EPA emission regulations. We cannot afford to decommission Drake in the next 5 years. That's just the bottom line. We need to look at whether we can decommission it in the next 10 to 20 years, which was much more likely and perhaps feasible. But we cannot decommission it in the next 5 years. We've got to continue to do what we're doing to comply with EPA emission requirements. I'm not going to comment on whether the Newman system is of value or not, but we had to go down that direction.
Thank you very much. And finally, Ms. Lathan, your thoughts on the makeup of the CSU board?
Sure. I am not in support of a new appointed board from some entity. I think that everything that I've been hearing, all the discussion is absolutely, there's a huge level of accountability that is expected from the ratepayers with elected officials. Now, that's not to say that a hybrid board would not make sense, but indeed, with studies over the last several years, 5 studies that indicate that we have got to talk about the governance structure, demand that we have a public discussion about this.
And again, the future of the Drake Power Plant, money well spent in terms of bringing up to EPA standards?
A lot of it is money demanded spent, and so the federal government is not necessarily our friend at the local level of government. We know that. The cost per kilowatt at a Drake is pretty extraordinary, folks. We have a pretty extraordinary local utilities. We have local control over that utility, and we, in order to decommission and just put some date up on the calendar to do so, we've got to have a very long-term plan about how that transition happens. And when you talk about renewable energy coming into the grid, that is a very, very serious issue in terms of how that power load is managed with that coming into the grid. So renewables are not necessarily the answer to keep the energy, especially in the downtown core and in all of our homes and throughout this region, the way we need it. We have to have that kind of backup that Drake offers through natural gas and coal, and I am not in favor of just putting a date on the calendar and just take Drake out when we know we have local control and extremely low rates.
Thank you very much. Our next question, we're going to start with Tony Carpenter. The question about the City for Champions project. Mr. Carpenter, you'll have 1 minute. Do you believe in using taxpayer money for C4C in any capacity? If so, do you believe the taxpayers should first approve the money, or should the city unilaterally approve the money for any aspect of that project? You have 1 minute.
We're going to take a lot less than a minute. The voters will have an opportunity to vote. As far as I'm concerned, that's where the rubber meets the road. If you want it, you vote for it, we do it. You don't want it, you vote against it, we don't.
So that's in totality, or would you separate out, for example, the stadium downtown issue, or do you have the same feelings about the entire four venue project?
Well, our core services don't include a baseball field. We need to take care of our infrastructure. We need to take care of our parks. We need to take care of the things that we need to take care of. And we're not doing that. And for us just to take $200 million from the state, well, you know what? The state government doesn't make money either. That's our money.
Thank you very much. Mary Lou, the question to you, do you believe in using taxpayer money for C4C?
I'd like to break that question down
Okay.
into the 4 projects that comprise C4C, and I'm a big supporter of 3 of them: the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs, the Visitor Center for the Air Force Academy, and the Olympic Museum to be built in America the Beautiful Park. And one of the reasons, I mean, I think they'll all be good for the city, but one of the reasons is there's not going to be any tax dollar indebtedness involved in those projects. They're going to be owned by the university, the Air Force Academy, and a nonprofit organization managing the museum. I think we should take the whole baseball stadium question off the table. It's totally undefined, and until there's a business plan that we can look at to see what it's going to cost, building it is one thing. That's the simple thing. Operating it is where you have so many variables. Everything from how many tickets do you have to sell, how much popcorn, how much beer, how many parking places, all of those things. And until that's answered, we don't even know what the gap would be. But we will be on the hook if that's a big gap or a little gap. And I absolutely think if that's the case, it has to be voted on by the voters of Colorado Springs.
Thank you very much. Joel Miller, your thoughts, sir, on the C4C project using taxpayer money. Should the city unilaterally spend, or is it something voters should decide first off?
Absolutely not. If voters are expecting our government to do those core roles that I talked about in my opening statement, and nothing having to do with those core roles is related to a museum or a stadium. There are hundreds of pages on this project. There is a detailed plan that had to be presented to the state. It was put together by a Denver lawyer who got a $100,000 bonus for putting it together. By the way, he's a donator to one of my opponent's campaigns. This project would put citizens, and it was designed deliberately to avoid a vote. The method of financing that was presented to the state was put together to circumvent Tabor, and that's what it is. And it is there, it exists, it already exists. So they'll tell you the plan's not put together. It is put together. The state decided on the plan based on what was told to them. Citizens are not going to get a vote unless we demand it. There are cities all over the country that have gone bankrupt and can't provide core services because of projects like this. Stockton, Fresno, El Paso, even Glendale that hosted the Super Bowl, and we have a minor league soccer team.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. John Southers, your thoughts on the C4C project. Where do you come down in terms of taxpayer funding and taxpayer voting moving forward?
The 3 projects, the sports medicine program at UCCS, the movement of the Visitor Center, and the U.S. Olympic Museum folks are not going to require a burden on the Colorado Springs taxpayers. I have no problem with us taking advantage of the state increment, sales tax increment financing to support those. The problem is with the downtown stadium arena. We haven't seen a final funding proposal and what sort of burden it would have on local taxpayers. If it has any burden whatsoever, it should go to a vote of the people.
Thank you very much.
Rob, can I follow up real
please.
quickly? There were a couple of my opponents that said that there wouldn't be any local investment in any of the other projects besides the stadium. And it's unfortunate, but it makes very clear in the arrangement with the state, between the state and the city, that in order for the state to call the museum complete, the city will have to spend $129.6 million on downtown infrastructure related to the projects. So although it won't go straight to the museum, the city is on the hook for about $130 million.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lathan, your thoughts on C4C?
Sure, there are 4 projects, we all know that. There are really 2 pieces to this. There's the state tax increment financing piece. They charge 2.9% sales tax in our region. The state collects that no matter what on everything that you pay. They're saying in this formula that they will leave their base alone, all their forecasting for their budget, leave 1.5% growth rate alone, and then of the net new revenue from new people coming into the region and reaching in their back pocket, pulling out their wallet and spending new money, they will rebate essentially back 13.06% of that net new revenue to these projects to invest here in our economy. I love that. I think that's great. The question is whether the city and the county as local government use the same formula for investment in that downtown arena. There is much work to be done before that can be determined. There's much private investment that needs to be cultivated before we even know what the number is. But this is critically important that we be fair to allow this process to go forward. And if there is that kind of investment, I've said it over and over again, we will go to a vote and ask the people if that's the way they'd like to invest that net new revenue.
Thank you very much. And finally, Mr. Martinez, your thoughts. Do you believe in using taxpayer money for C4C? If so, do you believe the taxpayer should first approve the money, or should the city unilaterally approve the expense?
You know, like they said, the last 3 projects, they're well funded and taken care of. It's the stadium downtown that we have the biggest problem with. If we don't build something downtown, regardless it be a stadium or some sort of event center, we really truly needed to start bringing in our visitors. Tax money. We're going to have to invest somehow in what we're doing downtown. If we don't, we're going to be lagging behind Pueblo and Denver. I do believe we need to talk with the citizens on what needs to be done. We can always restructure what we're going to build and how we're going to build it. By using taxpayer money, you're all investing in the same project. I hope that we can move forward and bring jobs. We need the jobs. They're going to bring jobs. As long as we keep everything local, make sure we employ those who are going to build it here, those who are going to work it here. So, yes, taxpayer money, it's a bad thing to say, but it's something we have to do.
Thank you very much. Our next question has to do with taxes. We are going to begin with Mary Lou Makepeace. Ms. Makepeace, do you think city revenues are adequate, or do you think a tax increase is needed? If not, would you pledge to oppose all tax increases? What is your thoughts, generally speaking, on where we are on the revenue side as it relates to tax increases moving forward? You have 1 minute.
I feel like we answered that previously. It's not up to the mayor to raise taxes. It's up to the citizens under Tabor's. Citizens have to vote on that.
Well, I understand that, but I think people want to know where would you come down in terms of advocating one way or the other.
It depends on what we're advocating for. One thing I've learned over the years is the citizens don't embrace taxes just for revenue's sake. Citizens will support taxes if they know where and how and what for that money is going to go. Going back to what I said earlier, we need to have a robust discussion about what kind of community we want to be. My personal value is I don't think we have sufficient revenue. There are a number of reasons for that. The downturn and the impact on the Tabor formula that says how much money we can spend, that ratchet down effect means that we're in the hole. If we're not in the hole currently, we were just previously. We have a very low tax rate in this community, and all of those things combined mean that we don't have enough revenue. But we have to have that conversation with the voters. Do you want to be the kind of community where you have poor services, you have a longer response time from the police department and the fire department, and the reason is we don't pay that many taxes? Or do we want to be a community that says we have excellent service and we have an excellent community, and an excellent community and excellent services are going to cost more money than we currently have?
Thank you very much. Joel Miller, the question to you, sir. Again, do you think city revenues are adequate? Do you think a tax increase is needed? Would you oppose tax increases depending on what the scenario is?
I do I echo what my opponents have said. This is a matter for City Council to place on the ballot. The mayor has no authority over the ballot, so the citizens would have to decide. I don't think it's appropriate for the mayor to use resources to push one political side of an agenda over another. So that would be up to the citizens. But we cannot discuss the need for new revenue when we're going to citizens and saying, we are going to build a stadium. You can't drive on potholes without playing Frogger to get here. And yet we're going to go to the citizens and say, we need more revenue for those potholes. And by the way, we're going to build a new stadium and infrastructure for our museum. You okay with that? Because I'm not. I think if we focus on those core roles, we can get a lot of those things done. And, you know, I really think that when we do focus on the role of government and we stop giving out severance pay, like has been done in the last 4 years, $2 million, and we stop getting outside counsel, $2 million, we can pay for the things that we need to do and that we're expected to do by the citizens.
Thank you very much. John Suthers?
Road, bridges, and stormwater are essential government services. The city has to do it. So we have to look, as I say, at our projected revenues, what our critical priorities are for the next 5 to 10 years. Will those revenues be able to meet those stormwater, or those infrastructure priorities? If not, then we've got to have a conversation with the voters. Here's your options. How do you want to do this? And I'm willing to take that message. And we know from history, since 1992, when the Taxpayer Bill of Rights passed, about 60% of local initiatives have passed. But the formula is pretty simple. You got to be very honest and straightforward. You got to be simple. The voters have to understand it. And you've got to say, this is what we need. This is exactly what we're going to do with it. And this is when it's going to end. And if that's the decision of the council, that that's what we need to do, I'm willing to take that message to the voters.
Thank you very much. Amy Lathan?
Thank you. I made it very clear over the last few years as part of the Stormwater Task Force that I think we do need more revenue for dedicated stormwater funding, and it's on its own as a dedicated funding stream because it's so different. It needs to be regional based on the science, and so we do have a revenue deficiency as it relates to stormwater, and we're going to continue that discussion. I do not support a sales tax increase at this time for a couple of reasons. One is that we're already off balance already in this economy with sales tax to property tax, and it's very susceptible to volatility in the economy and then to the recovery after an economic downturn due to Tabor and issues that we face there. That is very impactful at the local level. Furthermore, I believe strongly in integrating, regionalizing some of these services that are redundant, that we can save money, and we need to go through that entire process before I'm going to stand up and tell anybody that we need a tax increase. On the last part of the question, this is local government. This is Tabor that says the people decide, and I have supported some and opposed some in my time in office, and I believe in local government and the delivery of those services and being reasonable about asking those questions when necessary and when we've established that we don't really have those resources.
Thank you very much. Lawrence Martinez, your thoughts. Again, do you think city revenues are adequate? Do you think a tax increase is needed? Would you pledge to oppose tax increases, sir?
You know, I've lived here a long time. One of the things everyone always says is no taxes now, but when you get in office, they raise the taxes. So yes, we do need to raise the taxes up. Do you like the roads you drive on? Do you like calling the police after your car got broken in to do an online report? Do you want the emergency services to come a little quicker to take care of yours and your loved ones? If we don't raise taxes, we can't fix what's wrong with the city. But by raising taxes, I'll make sure to bring in better jobs and a higher paying wage so we can use those taxes for what we need. We also need to bring in more taxes because if we don't beautify the city, we don't bring the people that want to come here and live here. It's a great city. We need to start taking care of it a little bit better.
Thank you very much. Tony Carpenter, you have 1 minute, sir.
At the present time, I don't believe we have enough funds. We have to have a discussion on Tabor for the ratchet effect to be able to, it's not raising taxes, it's just making sure we can pay for what we want. Government doesn't make money. Get out of everybody's pockets. Our businesses, we need to cut taxes. Like Amy Lathan has said, the business tax, come on. What we need to do is the smart thing, have no special interest groups, have an intelligent conversation and say, what do I got to do to make this community worth coming to? And we will get a little tax off that recreational marijuana.
That is our next question, as a matter of fact. We're going to start with Joel Miller. Obviously, this is a decision City Council must decide. But again, we want to get your opinions about things regardless of the fact that you will be making the ultimate decision. I think voters need to hear from you on where you stand on this issue. Obviously, the makeup of City Council, Mr. Miller, is going to change. Ultimately, it's going to be up to them to repeal the ban on retail marijuana sales in the city. Do you support the ban? Please reiterate how you did vote. Would you favor the sale of retail pot, which obviously was approved by the majority of voters in Colorado Springs?
Okay, well, let me start by making a distinction. Amendment 64 was on the ballot. It made it legal to possess marijuana. It also said that local governments would either decide to ban or regulate. So council had the call to make on that.
Yes, that is true. Thank you for that clarification. Yes.
I supported the ban because 60% of my constituents rejected Amendment 64, and I voted with them. As mayor, I have no purview over the ballot. Again, if citizens bring this, and I think the most effective way, like the proponents did on the state level, they did a state constitution change. If they want any lasting effect for wanting this retail marijuana, they'll have to do a charter change. And whether that's petitioned onto the ballot or put on the ballot by city council, the mayor has no purview on putting that on the ballot. And I don't think it's in the mayor, as I said before, I don't think the mayor should be advocating one side or another politically when citizens are about to vote on something. That should be made up to them.
Thank you very much. John Southers, your thoughts, sir, on overturning a ban on retail pot sales or maintaining the current status?
I'm personally not there yet where I want to embrace legalized marijuana. I've seen the studies as to how when we lower the perception of risk among adolescents, how the adolescent use of the drug increases. And we are lowering the perception of risk among young people. I want to see over the next several years how this plays out in Colorado. What's the overall impact on youth drug rates? Have we made any progress in getting rid of cartels? So far, the evidence is not. And a variety of issues. There's a tremendous amount of diversion of marijuana out of Colorado. We've now become a major supplier to areas that didn't vote for it. So there's a number of reasons that cause me not to want to embrace this. But let me make it very clear. If the citizens of Colorado Springs vote to legalize recreational marijuana, just as I've done on the state level, I will do the best job I can of implementing their directions.
Thank you very much. Amy Lathan, your thoughts, ma'am.
Sure, I've got a voting record on this. I voted against retail establishments for recreational marijuana at the county, and I would support the same at the city. This is let me tell you about the number one thing that we hear from employers locally when we're talking about nurturing and expanding local employment and recruiting primary employers from outside of this city. They talk about workforce. They talk about the educated people, the systems that are in place to be able to support their organization, their company, whatever it is that they're doing. I don't believe that just getting some tax money, cold hard cash up front is going to help us in the long term in terms of everything that this does within our culture. I'm not supportive of the proliferation of recreational marijuana within our city. I have not been supportive of it within our county, and my position remains the same on that.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez, you have 1 minute.
You know the voters voted for it. We've spent the money already asking them. Simple answer. I've sat across the street in Manitou and watched their store. 35% of that goes back into Manitou. The other 65% of the people buying come back into Colorado Springs. We really need to truly start getting the money from the sales of that just as well. You know, the mayor of Manitou would love for us not to open a store here. But we can control it. We can open 1 or 2, and that's it. As far as with the kids, I do a program called Inversion, Second Chance to Judicial Education. I work with these kids. I ask them. They know drugs are bad. They know they don't need to start doing it. Employers and employees, they already know what's going to happen if they don't pass a UA. They're not going to be working anymore. So let's start to gather the money from that situation and not just let everybody else get the tax money.
Thank you very much. Tony Carpenter, your thoughts, sir?
Well, the taxpayers have already said, and we didn't listen. And they come up with these thoughts of, well, you know what? If we make it illegal, nobody's going to do it. Not everybody in Colorado Springs smokes pot, but there are quite a few that do. And regardless of what law we take, it's all about education. if we take some of this money and educate, we could probably downturn the use of it. You gotta be 21 years old, so the kids aren't gonna have the opportunity to go into the shop and buy it. The voters have already voted. Nothing would change. It is what it is. And anybody thinks that we're gonna cut down the use by making it illegal. We've been around a lot of years. I've been around a lot of years, and it was illegal for a long time, and guess what? It's still going on.
Thank you. And finally, Mayor Lou Makepeace.
Well, I think that we put our heads in the sand if we think that not permitting the sale of recreational marijuana would somehow stop kids from getting marijuana or would somehow stop marijuana from being in our community. Because marijuana is in our community, has been in our community, and I probably will never smoke a joint and never have, but I also know that the citizens said by majority vote that they would like to see recreational sale in Colorado Springs. I cannot, and I share the frustration with a number of people, why is it that council didn't allow then the question to be asked of the voters? We've had a couple of years experience now. We see Manitou, we see Pueblo, we see Denver. Those communities seem to be doing just fine. When we vote for something, why doesn't council listen? And I think that is even a more troubling question than the question of marijuana. At least if we allowed the sales, we could regulate it like we do alcohol and tobacco. And, oh yeah, there's the money, but I would never approve it just for the money. I think it needs to go back to vote of the people.
Thank you very much. Our next question, and we're going to start with John Suthers, is regarding business development. We're obviously in the midst of a situation where the Pentagon is looking at shutting down, reducing the number of military personnel at bases across the country. Fort Carson on the chopping block right now. That review is going underway. Huge effort community-wide to try and save Carson, spare those jobs. But the point of the question here is, what needs to be done aside from that situation and trying to maintain a strong military base? What needs to be done and what cost to more diversify our employment base and attract more high-paying jobs to the city? John Suthers, again, we'll start with you. You have 1 minute, sir.
We have to aggressively promote new job creation in the private sector. What the city government can do, number one, change the political environment at City Hall, because, folks, that's been killing us. That's been hurting us very seriously in getting companies here to expand and attracting companies here. They read the press clips. They don't want to come to a community that's got that kind of divisiveness, and the result of that divisiveness is that the city's not investing in infrastructure. I've talked to some companies that would love to expand here, but they say we need to see that the city is going to do what only cities can do: the roads, the bridges, the drainage systems. So, number one priority, change the political environment, make it more conducive to economic development. Let's get going on the infrastructure, and let's aggressively not only nurture and promote local companies to expand, but go out and attract new companies to Colorado Springs.
So are they looking at what you would or others would characterize as the gridlock among city council, or just the failure to make decisions on infrastructure development, et cetera? You have 30 seconds.
Rob, they're looking at both. And these are conversations I've had with companies that I know on a national basis, as my experience as Attorney General, that have a presence in Colorado Springs. There's one out on Highway 83 that'd love to expand in Colorado Springs. They got 1,300 employees. They've got the land. They'd love to expand, but they say, and they're not alone, we need to see that the city's got a vision of where it wants to be, and part of that is that they're resurfacing the roads in and around our investment. If we're going to put $400 or $500 million in it, we got to see that the city's doing what cities have to do.
Thank you. Amy Lathan, your thoughts in terms of diversifying our employment base?
You know, I've got an entire platform filled with very specific things up to broad policy that need to be implemented to move the needle for business development. These companies that are wanting to expand locally and certainly outside the city, with whom we sit and say, here's what we can do to help you through this process, they talk to us about the process and what that means to the company and what it means to their investors. So we sit at the table and we say, here are the things that we can do. Here's the punch list that you have in order to get your business going, in order to expand. And then when they go back a month later and a review agency that's part of that development review has come along and said, you know, I think you need to move that weight-bearing wall about 6 inches because we don't think that's safe. $60,000 later, their investors have left. Their project is in the tank. And it's because of development review that doesn't look at it through business lenses. Now, that's a broad look at it, but we have got to be serious about reform in city planning, regionalizing, and fundamentally what I believe in is the city government being relatively invisible, stable, reliable, consistent for the business community. And I have all the different kinds of ideas that we can't go into in a minute to be able to revitalize many areas of this city.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez, you have 1 minute.
You know, we should have already had a plan in place. We should have expected our city government to figure out this is what we need to do to move forward in case we start closing bases. We need to re-diverse our economic economy. We really need to go out to other cities. We need to tell them what we can do to bring in better business. We need to send out our mayor itself to go out to overseas, out to other states and tell them why you need to bring your businesses here. We need to increase our wage increase to $11 an hour. That way we can start putting more money into the tax base to bring in more businesses. We truly need to look at this. War has changed. It's now the push of a button instead of soldiers going out. I've talked with the soldiers. They already know they're moving on. So we need to start a plan now and not later.
And just to follow up, we've seen some success in the coordination of this airport industrial park area where we have seen some jobs come in. Would you like to see something like that in other aspects of the economy to perhaps organize these kinds of business groups in specific areas of the city? Is that part of a solution you're talking about?
Yes, I would like to bring in the high-tech jobs, but we also need to bring in the lower-end jobs because we need to employ those who are just coming out of high school. If we look at diversifying our economy, we go out, we bring certain jobs that need to be brought in. We start to educate our 11th and 12th graders on how to get these jobs. You bring in a plant for 200 people, give me a syllabus, give me the material. I'll go out to the high schools. I'll get these students ready so when they graduate, you cut that ribbon, we have your workers going right into the positions.
Thank you. Tony Carpenter, your thoughts on diversifying the employment base here, getting away perhaps from the strong military influence?
Well, I'm not going to worry about bringing business into this town. I'm going to take care of the ones that are already here. If we get off businesses back, these are the guys who make us money. Government doesn't make a dime, they spend it.
Give us an example, if you would, real quickly. What are some of the things you're seeing that are hamstringing businesses that you would like to see changed as mayor?
Well, the government doesn't work well with anybody. And it's a broad stroke, but every business can tell you. I work for Joe McCloskey, that it's a car dealership, and we work for the government. That's not the way it's supposed to work. They're supposed to leave us alone and let us make money, and then that way we can go forward. I don't care about bringing any other businesses in town and giving them a big tax break. I want to take care of what's here right now. We keep on talking about downtown. We got a lot more parts of this city than we're downtown. We need to sit down and look at everything that we can do, and government's not going to do it. You guys are. You put government in charge of the money, and you've seen what's happened. Come on, guys, let's take part.
Thank you. Mary Lou, you've seen how this community's grown. You know how it's gone from a military-based economy. Now we have to make some serious changes. What's your vision in terms of employment diversification?
Well, I agree. We should have had a plan in place already, and we do have to have that. You know, the BRAC comes around, about every 10 years, and every 10 years we are running around like the sky is falling because we don't get to make the decision. Those decisions are made in D.C. So while we love the military and we're very dependent on 40% of our economy is based on military expenditures, we do need to diversify. And I don't think we have a plan. I don't know that the city has a plan. I don't know that the business community has a plan. I would like to sit down with the business community and say, what kind of businesses do we want to go after? What do we need to do to entice them to come here? I would commit that any any role of the city in working with businesses coming into the community. We would make sure that we can facilitate on the city part, that we're not an impediment, but we are facilitating. But I also think that looking to our local businesses is something that we can do a better job of. You know, if we have a good business in this town, some other community is probably recruiting them. So I want to let them know that I appreciate the jobs that they're offering and the contribution they're making to Colorado Springs. And oh, by the way, what can I do, what can the city do to make it possible for you to grow your business?
Let me just follow up real quickly. You've seen some a consolidation over the last several years in terms of the EDC, the Chamber, Hispanic Chamber, et cetera. Is it still too diverse? Are there still too many competing factions from the business base in your view, that we're not getting a core idea about how the city needs to move forward in terms of diversification? Is that a problem, do you believe?
I don't think we have too many groups. I think the transition with the EDC and the Chamber has been a little bumpy, and they're, you know, it's like anything new. It's like the new form of government in Colorado Springs. It takes a while to work out all the bumps and the lumps. And I would say the future looks bright. I would, as mayor, work shoulder to shoulder with whomever the new ED is going to be. I would go on prospecting trips. I would welcome people to Colorado Springs. I mean, I think that the mayor has to be involved because businesses expect that your chief executive would be there welcoming them and that they're important and we want you to come here.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, you sat on council. Your perspective from that chair, trying to be mayor, diversifying this local base, is council, is collectively city government doing enough in your view, and what would you change to diversify?
Well, first of all, I don't want to abandon the Department of Defense. We've got to do what we can. I have a whole plan on my website about what we can do to preserve what we have here. The first thing to do is to take the almost $1 million budget of the Economic Vitality Department, who has worked almost exclusively on City for Champions and has abandoned the core role of government, which is creating an environment for the free market and creating an even playing field. And while John talked about it's the divisiveness between council and the mayor, I believe that's nonsense. I think anybody that's doing any research into Colorado Springs would find that we are governed by cronyism and special interests and not a free market and an even playing field. So that's the first step. We sit down with business sectors and we all get in a room and we have a coordinated front to help business. How do we remove the obstacles for existing businesses and businesses that would come here? That means utilities. How can we offer them extension of utilities infrastructure? That means workforce and Pikes Peak Community College. That means city council. That means the business community. How do we put that, and city council, how do we put that all together into changing ordinances, changing policies to make it a more business-friendly community?
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions. We're kind of running out of time here, and I want to just get some quick yes or no answers from you on a couple of things, if you don't mind. Again, we're trying to get as much information out as we can. I'm going to start with Ms. Lathian. The first question is yes or no, and again, I apologize for the brevity of this, but we want to get some more information out. Do you believe that the city should sign off on a contract to allow the YMCA, for example, to run the senior center? And that is the question. Is that something that the city should be signing off on?
I'm willing to have the discussion. I am not going to commit to a position on that at this point. I think there are a lot of ways we can go with that.
Okay. Mr. Southers?
Stable funding of the senior center is a big issue, and I'm not sure it comes about as a result of the YMCA contract without putting fees on seniors. So I got to tell you that more discussion is necessary.
Mr. Miller? Do you believe the city should sign off on a contract to allow the YMCA to run the senior center?
Unless you let me see the contract, I can't say yes or no.
Thank you. Ms. Makepeace? Yes or no?
I would say yes, we absolutely need a senior center, and no, I don't. Given the information I have now, I would not agree on it.
Mr. Carpenter?
I'm going to show you I'm not a politician. No.
And finally, Mr. Martinez.
I would also have to take a look at the contract to see what the pros and cons are, to see if we will be able to work with them.
Thank you. Another quick question here. Again, I'm going to run down the same list. Would you be willing to support the addition of CSPD aerial support at an estimated cost of $1 million? Ms. Lathan?
It's not on the top of the priority list, but in partnership with some fire ideas that we have to help really look for fire and be better responsive, it's a possibility.
John Suthers?
It's a cost versus benefit issue, and if the benefits outweigh increased cost, yes.
Joel Miller, would you be willing to support the addition of CSPD aerial support at an estimated cost of $1 million based on what we've heard from PD?
I've been in aviation my whole life, but I would have to say no until we can get response times for the rest of the city.
Mary Lou Makepeace?
Generally, I support the idea, but without details, it's hard to say absolutely yes, but generally, I support the concept.
Thank you. Tony Carpenter?
No.
And Mr. Martinez?
Yes, I would if the numbers worked out right. I've been in squad cars before and seen people that we were trying to get away without us being able to follow them.
Thank you very much. Our next question has to do with the homeless situation downtown. This is actually an email we received at KOAA.com from a taxpayer. She said, "My daughter is a young professional, and on a recent visit, she admitted she was a bit nervous about walking alone downtown. Are current efforts to deal with the homeless population adequate, candidates, and what would you change?" Let's begin with Mr. Suthers. You have 1 minute.
The homeless issue, if I'm the mayor, is going to be returned to those public and private agencies that have expertise in it. It's not going to be a First Lady initiative of the city of Colorado Springs. We have to, this is a very tough issue. There's all kinds of legal impediments as to what you can do. I think we're starting down the right path in terms of some policing strategies. I've noticed a lot of officers moving around downtown, getting people moving around. We also have to talk about where the homeless services are located, and if there's a possibility of relocating them in a place that has less impact on the city business community. Folks, we're not the only large city in America that has this problem. Lots of them do, and we have to look at the best solutions that people are coming up with to deal with this very complex problem.
Thank you very much. Joel Miller, your thoughts on the situation with the homeless downtown. What's worked, what hasn't worked? What are your thoughts? You have a minute.
Well, first of all, I'll agree with my opponents. We're not unique. I travel all around the country and all around the world, and there are homeless and there are poor everywhere. And our homeless and our poor, they're not just numbers and they're not debris on the street, but at the same time, I understand we have issues. We passed a no camping ordinance, and we talked about enforcement of that. But one of the provisions that's necessary is that we have shelters available for the homeless that are being booted out of these campsites. And yet, we have dollars that have come through the federal government that through our housing office have not gone to build shelters for the homeless. So I think our housing office, it's been started, and I think Amy Cox is doing good work. We have a long way to go to make sure those federal dollars are getting spent the way they should. But I also think that when you talk about policing, we need to bring this back to the nonprofits who have been caring for the poor, for some of them, for centuries, and letting them be the drivers of the conversation of how we best care for our poor and our homeless.
Thank you. Mary Lou Makepeace, your thoughts on the homeless situation downtown?
Well, the homeless is a very generic term, and you can break that down into
Right.
different populations. We have homeless vets, and they require certain things. And I know that Jay Cimino is about to start a new facility, Mount St. Carmel, I think it's called, that will serve as a central point where veterans or their families can come and find out what services are available. And they probably have more available to them than some of the other elements of the homeless population. Then we have families, and generally a family being homeless as a result of a missed paycheck or something that's happened in the family that they're living on the margin just threw them over the edge. We have a number of facilities for families. We need more. Then we have the people who have addictions, or people, another category is people who have mental illness, and we do a very bad job with that element of the homeless population. Clearly, we need more services for people who fall into that. Then we have the panhandlers, and that's kind of how we all think, oh, they're the homeless. Well, they're probably not homeless. That's what their job. That's how they get revenue.
Would that be a priority funding for you in terms of
for the panhandlers?
No, in terms of providing more services that you said were
Right,
not
no,
adequate.
saying we
Yes,
would
I'm
turn it over.
advocating, anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Come on, I can't give a yes or no answer to something like this. We have some wonderful nonprofits in our community who are doing incredible work with difficult populations, but their resources are limited too. And so I don't have the specific answer. I know a day center is going in down by the on Mill Street. Amy Cox has done wonderful work with that. It's a really complex problem.
It is.
And
I'm going to
there
have
are
to cut you
people-
off there. Thank you.
Okay.
Tony Carpenter?
Can I have your time?
Again,
Still wouldn't be
I
enough.
feel your pain. I
Still
wish we
wouldn't be
had more
enough.
time. It is what it is.
Well, downtown is not the only place that homeless people are. We need to help the people who want help. The ones that don't want help, I mean, there's a lot of open beds at night at times because people can't follow the rules. We need to help the people that need help. We also need to help them obtain jobs, and to do that, we've got to create them. And the government's not going to do it, you are. We need to take and work on the city and get off of the businesses back, let them create jobs. We'll have less homeless. We're never going to get rid of the problem. And there are different groups, and they would be treated differently, as in, if you don't want a job, we can't force them to take one. So we need to help as much as we can, but we can only help the ones that want to be helped.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez?
So do they really think by moving it, we're really going to stop the problem? For $1.85, they can get on the bus and come back downtown? I've studied this problem for 6 months. I've eaten at the Merriam Soup Kitchen for 6 months. I've been to the Springs Rescue Missions, set across those who have eaten. We really give a great life to those who are homeless here. Why would we expect them to move forward when we give them everything they need to have to be homeless? We're starting to turn this into a cottage industry. We need to make those who are homeless more responsible for themselves. We need to issue them a card so they can't keep going getting services from one place to another. Our nonprofits don't even get together to speak to each other about what services they're giving and how they're going to take care of this. They have multiple meetings all the time. But this community changes quite a bit, the homeless community. So a one-fix approach will not work. But requiring them to be more responsible for themselves, 3 months, you can't get trained in what you need to do, it's time to leave.
Thank you very much. Amy Lathan, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. It's obviously a very complex issue within a community, not only for the humane issues that are involved, a night like this, sheltering human beings who are out in the cold, all the way to businesses that are impacted by vagrancy and people who are fearful on the streets. I can tell you I've lived in Colorado Springs for over 30 years, and last fall, my husband and I and some friends downtown, first time in my life I've ever been afraid in Colorado Springs, right on Tejon, and that's not right. And that's a problem in our business community. It runs the spectrum. We have one of the most vibrant, nonprofit, faith-based communities in the state of Colorado. We have partnerships that are extraordinary in this city. We've seen that as we've come together for a variety of issues, including disaster recovery, et cetera. I don't believe in an initiative to end all homelessness because I do not believe it is possible. But we do have to deal with this, and I think a campus approach in some cities works quite well. Code enforcement, mental health, community development block grants that go to homeless initiatives at the city already, all of those things work together to help approach this problem.
Thank you very much. Again, I apologize. We can't give you all more time and ask you more questions. We've got a short time window here to fill. Having said that, we're going to move on to our closing statements. Again, this is in reverse order to the opening statements. We're going to begin with John Southers. You have 1 minute, Mr. Southers.
Ladies and gentlemen, government doesn't build great cities, people do. But for the people of Colorado Springs to reach their full potential in building a great city, they need a city hall that is a positive force for change and not a detriment to it. I have a vision for Colorado Springs where the infrastructure and amenities of our community are worthy of the incredible natural beauties that surrounds us. And I have a vision that the private sector employment opportunities will expand to the point that our children and our grandchildren can find in Colorado Springs a great place to live, work, and play. I have managed very large organizations, and I can effectively and efficiently manage the executive branch of the city of Colorado Springs. I've established relationships throughout Colorado and the nation that can be of great assistance to Colorado Springs in reaching its full potential. I want to get Colorado Springs moving again, and I'm asking you to join me in that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Southers. Amy Lathan, you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Thank you. As I said earlier, it's been an honor to serve locally here with all of you on so many different issues. Again, running the gamut from stormwater and all of the things that we talk about to transportation issues, to recovery, to local government service delivery. I have experience day in and day out to this day in budget and fleet and parks and IT. Folks, we need to compete in information technology for our young workforce, in planning services, development services that impact business owners, business expansion, business recruitment every single day as they go through that process. Those impacts that impact those investors. And ladies and gentlemen, we have got to think differently in this city about the way we deliver those services. We've got to think differently about the way we can integrate to generate more economic activity. That's what this is about. More people generating money in this city, more prosperity. I want to support the free market and do it in a functional, respectful, and way that you can all be proud of.
Thank you very much.
AmyLathanformayor.com.
Thank you very much. Lawrence Martinez, you have 1 minute.
I'm not a longtime politician. I was sitting where you guys are sitting now. I thought it was time that I came forward and bring the wisdom that you guys know. We do need more jobs, but we really need to come together as a community first and start taking care of each other. Once we do that, everybody will look at how we live here and they'll want to come here to live. As long as we move forward as a community and we understand to trust each other, then we can begin to trust City Hall. My plan is to move forward with jobs, move forward with education, better transportation, affordable housing. We need to bring in more structural industries. We need to make sure if we give them a $20 million break on their buildings and everything else, they're going to give us something back in return.
Thank you very much. Mary Lou Makepeace, you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Thank you for being here this evening, and I wish all citizens in Colorado Springs would take time out of their schedules to come and learn more about city government and the people who want to lead city government. I'm the only candidate who has municipal city experience. I've been on council for 12 years. I was the mayor for 6 years. I can hit the ground immediately on day one. And we really, quite frankly, can't afford another 4 years of a mayor who's taking on the job training. We need to get moving immediately. So I appreciate your being here. I appreciate your interest in the city of Colorado Springs. And just thank you. I hope you support me. But what I most hope is that everyone votes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tony Carpenter, you have 1 minute, sir.
Yeah, my father always had that, his few statements that he made, and one of them was the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome. You want to put somebody in as the mayor that has special interest groups tying them up, tens of thousands, some of them hundreds of thousands of dollars. If I'm giving somebody $10,000, I tell you what, they're going to do something for me. And when I say that, I've actually went to some of these meetings and they've asked me, Tony, what are you going to do for me? I'm going to do for you just exactly what I'm going to do for every citizen of Colorado Springs. No, you don't understand. What are you going to do for me? As I exited their room, and I don't even go into those things anymore. We need to take and stop doing the same thing over and over. Let's get somebody that knows business and listens to you. We can go forward if we get a government that stops thinking that they're smarter than you are.
Mr. Carpenter, thank you. And finally, Joel Miller, you have 1 minute, sir, for a closing statement.
While I was on city council, I fought for citizens' rights and wallets. When there was an issue that couldn't get resolved through normal channels, or when I thought government was hiding important information from citizens, I let the citizens know about it. That was my responsibility. The authors of our First Amendment didn't write it so people would get on a soapbox and say, "Isn't government wonderful?" They crafted the First Amendment in part so that people would have the right to hear and learn about problems. And they gave us the amendment so that people can assemble and could petition their government to do something about it. Some people have called me divisive, and in some ways they're right. I divide government employees and elected officials into two groups: those who believe the people work for them, and those who understand it's really the other way around. If I'm elected mayor, I think we'll have a lot to celebrate in coming years. I promise you I will celebrate with you whenever I can, but I will also fight for you when I must. I will work for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joel Miller, Tony Carpenter, Mary Lou Makepeace, Lawrence Martinez, Amy Lathan, John Southers, thank you all for joining us, taking time out of your schedule to speak to the voters, and also the folks on KOAA-5 and at KOAA.com. Just a reminder, everybody, again, ballots are going to be going out very soon. The election is April 7th. You need to have those ballots back in by 7 p.m. on April 7th, of course. A lot of important decisions to be made, not just the mayor's race. Also, we've got 3 at-large city council races, also picking a replacement for Mr. Miller in District 2, a recall election for Helen Collins as well. Of course, tune in to KOAA-5 News 5 on election night, April 7th, for all the results and reaction. Again, I want to thank the El Pomar Foundation for teaming up with us once again to put on this event. They did great work for us this evening. Also, our thanks to the Broadmoor for housing this discussion here this evening. We thank them, and all of you who made it through the snow to drive out tonight. Thank you so much for being involved in the community. And again, I want to say, everyone, please be sure to vote. Make your vote count. Make a difference. Do your research. Find out what it is you want this community to do moving forward, and then vote accordingly. Again, on behalf of News 5 and KOAA-5, I want to thank everyone for watching this evening and following us online at KOAA.com, and all the great questions that were sent in by our listeners and our online viewers. Until next time, I'm Rob Quirk. Drive home safely. Have a great night.